Cool. Today, whilst having a nice brew, we're going to go through a full drum mix, and it's going to be super killer.
Parallel compression, parallel saturation, transient shaping, samples, everything, phase, all of it. Everything you need for a killer drum mix is in this track. The track's by a band called Mufti. It's called Alapenge. Yeah, it's killer. The drummer Max did an amazing job recording the drums. The engineer at the studio is Tunbridge Wells Forum Recording Studio in Tunbridge Wells, bizarrely enough. The engineer is called Eric, I believe. I'm a little fancy. Saucy.
That some stuff is getting sent to a tops bus and some stuff is getting sent to a tubs bus. And what that allows me to do is treat the stuff that I want to be at the back of the mix, like cymbals, room sounds, some bits of percussion, differently to how I treat stuff that I want to be at the front of the mix, which might be really punchy.
Hopefully this isn't too boring. There's the tubs bus, there's the tops bus. You can see they get sent to a thing called D-split, which means drum split. I don't do this a lot anymore, but it's really, really handy when you really need to shape live drums a lot. So we've got flat, which means there's no processing. We've got glue, which means we're getting a little bit of glue compression. And then we've got 1176, which means I'm using an 1176 style compressor on it. And we'll go into a little bit more detail on what they're each doing later. Anyway, all of those parallels get sent to a drum bus, and then there's more processing on there. So there is quite a lot of processing, there is quite a lot of plugins. Not all of them are doing a lot, and some of them, as you can see, like this gain plugin is on minus 22.5. So the fader might be at 0, and same for this one, but they're actually 22 dB down. So they're only mixed in very lightly.
Cool, so there's a bit of automation going on there, as you can see, just making the most of things. I'll try and do it in the order that I would approach the mix. First thing that I do whenever I mix live drums is I work on the overheads. That's not true. The first thing that I do whenever I mix live drums is I work on the phase. And that means moving them, shifting them around slightly so that they are super, super cohesive, and then flipping them to make sure all of the waveforms are going the right way. But that's like a whole video in its own right. But it's really, really important. And if you want to know how to do it, I can show you. The really, 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 really important thing to remember is how well tuned those drums are, how well played those drums are, and how well tuned the room that they're playing in is. Like, that's amazing. If I press play and it's, you know, it didn't sound like that, right? Because they're mixed now. But if you can hear that stuff's super coherent in a pair of overheads, you know you're in for a good drum mix. So the first thing that I like to do with overheads generally is just add a bit of saturation. I feel like it locks the kick, snare and hat all into a place, and it like rolls off the super fizzy stuff. It's just always works for me, just doing a bit of that. And then I'll do a little bit of EQ. So here, if I I'll listen, let's listen to these and I'll A/B them. Both channels will have the same settings. Yeah, so rolling off loads of stuff down at 30, that's a shelf though, so it's really tapering it off. And then taking out a load of like 350. Nothing crazy going on, no compression, just a bit of saturation. The next thing that I'll do is I'll probably start bringing in some of the close mics. So now we could listen to the kicks and snares, close mics. So nothing crazy going on there. SSL channel strip on everything. Probably doing a little bit of compression. No compression, just tucking out mud at 300. I'm not even boosting any lows. Adding some 3K. That's kick in. Kick out is adding some 1.5K, tucking in some mud down at 250. Not even adding low end, right? Snare, yeah, adding top, adding mid-range, cutting mud, adding loads of low end. I'm adding 10 dB at 200 hertz, and I am doing some compression. So if you want to see what that looks like, and I mean, this is the last chorus, right? It's the loudest part of the song, so it's not crazy. And then snare, oh, let's have a look at this EQ on snare top. Brightening the high shelf here, a few dB, that's it. I think that's at like 12K. It's around there somewhere. It's really nice, airy. It's actually super grainy. So when I want to boost top end and it be like saturated and like really noticeable in the mix, like not transparent, I use that top end boost. And then rack and floor tom. Let's see what we've got going on here. Just same stuff, shaping. cutting out some of like the stick noise. I don't like stick noise on toms. It's something that I really battle with in mixes, trying to get them to cut through but not sound like 90s or 80s or whatever it is. Low end boost there, cutting out some mud, and no compression. So that's all good. Floor tom is probably the same. Yeah. And then we've got a room mic here. Sounds amazing. So let's A/B this 18 dB pull at 30 hertz. Just really reframing the sound of it behind, you know, to be focused on the snare. And that's going to allow me to put in more punchy low end. That was quite roomy and boomy, and the low end would be quite constant, which once you get that in with the bass, it's just going to stay there. It's just going to be like all the time. It's not going to be all like fat and punchy, fall to the floor, which is what you need it to be. So that's why I took it out. You know, it's amazing, isn't it? Similar thing happening here. I've gone a bit higher and taken less out and then done some mud. So I should say I would do all of these changes whilst listening to all of the drums. I don't really tend to EQ stuff in solo. Cool, so these toms, let's listen to those sections without the EQ in, where I've taken out that low end on the rooms. By taking out all that other low end from the other mics, you can actually feel more low end from the toms, but I'm not actually adding more. So, you know, it's all about that kind of stuff. And then I would have done the same exact process, but with the cymbals. Tapering low end, tapering low end, tapering harshness, tapering mud, and yeah, that's it. The rest are overdubs. So we've got this electric kit here, which is just fun.
Who's coming and who's going on?
And that's so cool, right? This is a really good example of like, don't touch stuff that doesn't sound like it needs anything. There's no EQ on that. So I've obviously like put an SSL plugin on all of the channels at the beginning of the mix and then not even opened that one, not even done anything to it. Cool. I think my computer's starting to struggle with running like a full mix and screen record OBS, but there we go. It's at this point I would start working on the buses. You can see there's quite a lot going on. So let's take out all of these parallels. So that's just all the samples and all of the close drums. We'll get into why I'm adding the samples later. Going into an API style plugin from Kush Audio. And then we've got this purified 1176 thing. It's only on 24% wet. Doing a bit of EQ. Doing a bit of saturation. It's just blended in. And then we've got some transient shaping and a little bit of low-end harmonics blended in there. This is a really, really cool plugin. It's lethal So just keep A-Bing it, because you can get some crazy sounds out of it really, really quickly that you regret later. And then we've got the Warmy Tube EQ, which is like a Pultec copy from Kive Audio, and it is so good. It's lush. Sometimes it can soften things a little bit too much, give you that like small top end that you get on like certain punk and rock records, but it is really, really good. So there I'm just adding and boosting a little bit of 30 hertz, which is obviously just scooping. Everyone knows the Pultec trick. If you don't, Google Pultec trick. There's about 1 million articles on it. And then I'm boosting 5K on this. Oh, I'm not boosting, I'm attenuating a bit of 10K. I'm not actually boosting anything. So just the very, very top end there, I'm just shelving a bit of that down. So let's listen to that, and I'll turn on and off all of those. So you can really hear it on the snare, particularly. It's all pretty gentle, but the snare really, really changes without all these plugins on. And that'll mostly be the transient shaper and the parallel compression. So let's do the same thing for the tops bus. First thing is a Neve style preamp plugin, and this just rolls off loads of top end, which is going to help the cymbals sit back. I find that when cymbals are super bright and sizzly at the top end, I A, don't particularly like it, and B, it doesn't really help me with mixing everything else. Reverb, there you go, just quite a lot of reverb there. Sort of pushes it back a bit. Boosting some 10K, attenuating some 20K. So again, rolling off the sizzle and boosting some lower brightness. And then here, I'm attenuating 10 dB at 30 hertz. So let's turn that off. Super gentle. It's not doing that much, is it? I mean, yeah, it is actually doing quite a lot. So then we've got, yeah, just a notch, a build-up resonance that I don't like. Yeah, you can hear there's like thing coming through. So let's A/B all of those changes. I'm not going to do the gain plugin. Let's do both sets. Quite a big difference. And now let's do these. I'd say that's adding snap more than anything else. Let's try the 1176 one. It's adding a lot of gain. So it's really saturating and really compressing. It's really like making everything way more like in your face, bringing up a load of cymbal noise. Adding a lot of energy. And then we've got this punch one here. Let's see if we can... Okay, I'll take this gain plugin off. That's adding a lot of snap. So this is the, yeah, decapitator, more clipping, more saturation. There's level 2 on that. And then this I should imagine it's doing anywhere from 6 to 10 dB. Yeah, so on the fills, it's getting up near 10, but the rest of the time, it's mostly doing like 4 to 6 dB. And that's slow attack, fast release, SSL, bus style compression, right? And it's just bringing the little points on the kick and the snare forward. Which is going to help things cut through the mix. So that's them all separate. Oh no, we've got one more, and then this one's actually pretty cool, right? I still use this quite a lot. So let me take this gain plugin off. So that's obviously smashed. That's just blown up. But if I take off this SSL thing, listen to it. And what this SSL plugin is doing is it's just expanding it. So it's only really letting the kicks and snares through. And by getting that extra control, I can absolutely smash it loads. And then I get a really like explosive length on each individual hit. And it's in mono. So it's really just focusing the kick and the snare and that ambience in the center, allowing room for more stuff on the side. So let's just now, we'll mute and unmute all of these. It's going to be a bit unfair because of the volume jump, but you'll just notice a massive difference, right? I know they're totally different volumes, but whatever. You can really hear that this snare is so much more punchy, and the kick like comes through underneath the snare a little bit as well. And they're like rock solid. They're just like rock solid in a groove. That might be not dynamic enough for some people, and that's cool. Yeah. It's not very dynamic, but sounds good. So there you go. And then we've got the drum bus. So the drum bus just got some plug-in here. I mean, it's not even, I don't know if it's even doing anything. Then we've got SSL drum strip. And you'll notice on this one, I don't have a transient shaper, but I do still have a little bit more low-end enhancement. And that's because I also want to excite the length. So I've done the tight bit. I've added a bit of excitement to the tight low end on the tubs bus, but I also want to do it on my drum bus as well, and I've split the work there. That I do that all the time. Now I know what that thing sounds like, I find myself reaching for it more and more, like a bit on just the close mics and then a bit on. And then we've got what I am using currently on my drum bus. Fantastic. Yeah, cutting some 500, boosting some 8K, attenuating some 20K, post compression, and we've got a 1 millisecond attack, 1.5 to 1 ratio. Yeah, let's just see what this is doing. It's not even on. Switched off in the plugin. So I obviously tried it. And didn't like it. Felt like I had enough compression already, probably. And then we've got another pull tech doing more shaping. So what have we got? Like 2 dB, yeah, boost and attenuate. This time it's 60. It feels like I've mixed it, like this kind of thing is where I've mixed it, and then instead of messing with what already works, I've just added another plugin when I've got into like a revision or checked it in the car or something. That's probably what that is. This bad boy is unreal. Just taking care of loads of harshness. And then when there's fills, it squashes some of that 300, 400 hertz down as well. It's like that saves me from having to actually set up dynamic EQs, and it saves me from having to automate things. Yeah, rad. Super, super cool. And then we've got, I don't even know what this is going to do. This might look a bit mental because hopefully it's not too bad. So with transient designers, like on the SSL native channel strip, they're not perfect. They don't grab the same way every time. And sometimes they'll throw up like a big clicky bit of transient. And also I really like to soft clip my drums before they hit the mix bus. That way, my mix bus compressor can tuck those transients into the rest of the mix in a really controlled way. It's how I get loud mixes before mastering, one of the ways. And then we've got gain plugin, which is flipping the phase. So after I've checked all my independent channels of phase, after I've checked all of my samples phase so that it's all super coherent, as punchy as I can get it, I will check my phase of my drums against my bass, and I will check it against the vocals, because basically what's happening with phase is sometimes it's pushing the speaker and sometimes it's pulling the speaker. And if the kick drum and snare drum are in phase with each other, but that is pulling, that sounds the best, but it's actually the wrong way. It's pulling the speaker, or it's trying to push the speaker, but the bass is trying to pull it and stuff like that. You have to just check all this stuff. I need to do a whole video on that. But yeah, so I'm actually just flipping the phase at the very last thing on my drum bus. Yeah, this is definitely something that's happened in notes, like 1 dB of top end, 1 dB of cut there. And then is that in? Yeah, I'm just tapering off some low end at the side, not in the mid channel. So that's all the bus work. You can see it's quite a lot, but nothing's doing that much except for that 10 dB cut on the tops channel. But even that's at 30 hertz, and it's a super broad, like gentle sounding EQ. You can see how you've got the parallels, which you've got like a little bit of punch or glue, and then you've got like the 1176 thing adding a load of like energy. You've got the punch with the vertigo compressor on there adding a load of snap to the drums, and then you've got the devil lock, which is doing loads of work. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to A/B all of the plugins on and off on the drum bus. There is a lot of effort happening on the buses. There's a lot of work being done, a lot of heavy lifting happening on the buses, and that's okay. Some people like to mix and get their individual channels, like process, like do all the processing there. But for me, I like to get like a good sound, not push things too hard, and then use a lot of different parallels, and I like to use a lot of bus processing to get that slamming. I really, really like compressed, in-your-face drums that are like booming but still punchy, and you can't really do that without a lot of love from the drum bus. We've had a little look through all the processing happening on the organic drum tracks. We can hear how mental it sounds. One of the reasons why I can do so much heavy-handed parallel compression and so much is because I can have full control over the volume of the hi-hats versus the close mics. So I can just get everything super, super blown up, and then as the cymbals get too crushed in all that parallel compression, I just turn them down a little bit. It's well good. Let's do the samples. Yeah. This is probably flipping the phase. Yeah. Tucking in a bit of... and saturating a bit. So without those two... it's making that top end really splatty and glued to the front of the mix. I do all these changes like whilst listening to the song, right? That obviously wasn't enough. I think I've duplicated this track, and then I have just done a crazy EQ around 1.5K. And that just comes in for the two choruses. Kick room. Shout out to Wax Studios, where I used to work in London. That is two condenser mics up against it. It had like an arched roof. It was some arches under a train track, and I would mic the two opposite walls, so it's super out of phase, but that means like that's a kick. Listen to how wide it is. Yeah, anyway, there you go. Kick out. Shout out to Nave Studios. Shout out to Tom Oral. Shout out to Desmeralda. That's from that session. It's a sample I made. Same for this one. That's like one hell of an almighty, like, no one's foot is that big, no one's bass drum's that big. It's really, really, really tight. So it's just adding punch to the whole mix. So let's listen to the drums and then I'll mute that sample. So you can see I'm using a sample really, really heavily, but because I'm using several to make up a sound, it doesn't sound too unnatural, especially in a song like this where, you know, it's just going to be on there. There is an argument that I could have worked these tracks harder and used more compression on them and pushed them more, but why, if this works and sounds good, why would I do that? Let's do the snares. Yeah, just flipping the phase. This would be the same snare, but just with decapitator on. Oh, no. No, it's a different sample. I think that's from recording at the Nave as well. Snare verb. Just a small snare sample with a reverb on. That way I can control the reverb perfectly. And then this is probably doing loads. This would be addictive drums. It's probably got a kick in as well. So everything's controlled and everything's mixed in such a way that it sounds like a natural thing in a room. It sounds like a live player. Yeah, I'm really proud of this drum sound. I think it sounds great. I hope that was useful. I think it was. Do you think it was? Like and subscribe, share. If you've got a question, put it in the comments. If you want me to do a video on phase, leave it in the comments. At the time of this video, if you go onto my website, which is www.edripley.com, you can book a free 15-minute chat, and that can be about anything. You want your track reviewed, just book one and I will see you at that booking. Otherwise, I'll see you at another video. Cheers.